as you hopefully will engage, with Corey Rathburn, who's here, from, Providence Health and Services, correct? And, I'm going to steal a little bit, Corey. I really feel aligned with Corey because of our own solution and the things that he's been able to do within, his organization. It's really pretty phenomenal. But, it kind of starts with, if we asked you all, who's implemented Lean? You would just say yes or no, yes.
Yes.
And Corey, I'm going to go by a little bit of this because that's why you printed me the bio.
Just don't steal my thunder too much.
I'm not going to steal the thunder. I cannot
I have
steal.
so much thunder to give.
I cannot steal your thunder. Believe me, I'm a rain droplet in your thunder. Okay. And you can ask lots of questions around the process of improvement and what you've done and that your people are just doing great. It's like a checklist. Yes, 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 yes. But as I had asked, if any of you were here, the very first healthcare session of the day, and I asked a question, it really came from Corey when I asked, well, do you survey your people and how connected do they feel to strategy? How connected do they feel to vision? And really there is a gap, and it's not just in healthcare, so don't feel like left out. And because if you all had filled the gap, then probably my software company wouldn't exist. So thank you for not filling the gap, and hopefully you'll let us help you as well. But a little bit more about, Corey, he does have a lot of thunder because this is really the longest bio that I have. And you all know that I'm substituting for the lady who actually studied this stuff. So it's a little bit more. But, Corey comes to us very seasoned. He's a very seasoned, 15 years experience in driving effective and positive change in various industries, including healthcare. He's received his degree in industrial engineering, so I'm just mentioning that because you know how engineers think. And also logistics at Purdue University, which is pretty impressive as well. Began his career as project engineer at Avery Dennison, where he went on to receive his Six Sigma Black Belt certification, which is no easy task, and lead some record plate product launches. So you have to share a little bit about that with us. And then he joined healthcare. And I think that's really, maybe some of you or most of you were in another industry before you joined healthcare, but I really feel that, healthcare sometimes can benefit from outside industry, whether you're hiring somebody from outside industry or you just go to other industry, process improvement, strategy execution type educational events. Because when healthcare gets together, they have a tendency to stick together, and they kind of give the same ideas back and forth, and they congratulate people on the same things, where when you bring somebody in from outside of healthcare, you can really benefit a lot. I'm not going to take, Corey's time. You know where you're at. You know why you're here. He's going to talk about integrating strategic deployment in daily management systems to drive process and culture improvement in healthcare. Let's welcome him. And give us your thunder.
Thunder coming. Here we go. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully everyone's had a great couple days here. I unfortunately could only make it here for today because I've been teaching an fraction of Greenbelt. I teach for ASQ, and yesterday and the day before I was in Virginia Beach area teaching a humongous group. It was like, I was kind of thinking like, well, I'm not going to be at a conference. There's going to be like tons of people there, right? Sadly, the class I just taught was probably 4 or 5 times as big as this group, but hey, we're going to bring some energy, right, and have a good presentation. So the cool thing about that was really seeing how companies, healthcare systems are engaging to say, we have to start doing something different. The way that we're working is not sustainable. And that kind of becomes like the flavor of the month of things to say or year. But how do we actually do that? How do we actually take the next step of going beyond just, oh, we have to do things different? How do we actually do things different? How do we start to engage our employees? In the previous presentation, it was great because she talked a little bit more at a high level of all the different elements that need to come together to start to drive this change. My presentation, admittedly, is a little bit more tactical of we really identify employee engagement, employee employee empowerment as being the secret sauce or the key element for us to have sustainable change, right? Because if you think about change, especially in healthcare, a lot of the times when change is done in healthcare, it's happening to people, right, and not by people. And that small little word changes the whole environment or vibe of a change, right? So I'll talk a little bit about that, just at a high level, kind of the doom and gloom slide, or if you're an optimistic thinker, the opportunity slide, that I'm sure a lot of you are very familiar with. By 2026, U.S. healthcare will surpass, so 20% of the United States gross domestic product will be healthcare. Yikes. In 1960, that number was 5% or less. That's pretty, I know it's been 50, 60 years ago, but to triple that percentage in 40 or 50 years is pretty incredible. U.S. spent $3.3 trillion on healthcare in 2016. That equates to $10,300 per person. Think about that. $10,300 per person. Here's our the healthcare spending as a percentage of GDP going up. Here's our awesome scatter plot talking about life expectancy. Look how much we're spending per capita. Well, our life expectancy has to be better, right? No, definitely not. And we are all the way down. If this was a value plot, we would be like the poster child for where we don't want to be, right? So this is not to, impart doom and gloom and say we're in big trouble. The thing I like to think of it here is we have a lot of opportunity and we have a lot of smart people that we can tap into and start to drive this. So just a couple other few high-level comments here. There's a very high correlation between low employee engagement and in the current state of healthcare in the U.S. So I'm asking that kind of as a leading question. A few comments here. When caregivers are more engaged, patients are less likely to develop complications or infections during their stay. Hacks directly lead to longer lengths of stay and higher costs. If we think about healthcare acquired condition, and we have a lot of lean Six Sigma people in here, hacks are by definition a waste, right? We drive up the length of stay, we obviously drive down patient satisfaction. So the more we can focus on hacks and other hospital-acquired lengths of stay and decrease those, the more effective we're going to be. Hospitals that rank in the top 25% for employee engagement also score within the top 19 or 20% of the highest ranking hospitals in HCAHPS. So if we have engaged employees, if we have high-level employee engagement, we also have HCAHPS or patient satisfaction scores that correlate very highly with that. This is a really interesting one. Gallup, in studying more than 200 hospitals, found that employee engagement, so the engagement of the caregivers, was the #1 predictor of mortality rates. Think about that. #1 is the level of engagement of caregivers is the #1 predictor of patient mortality rates. So that shows you that it goes beyond, she said I'm an industrial engineer. It goes beyond just looking at processes and improving them, right? There's a certain amount of love and passion around this that, we can't really measure. Culture, empowerment, and engagement are some of the key factors that drive cost, patient safety, and patient satisfaction. I think I'll hit on that a few times as we go through the presentation. Some things as we start to go from a micro level down to our little the country of California, Southern California level. Historically, the lowest, so this is kind of a Southern California study we did looking at employee and caregiver engagement studies. The lowest caregiver employee engagement question always scores less than 50% on agree or strongly agree, is do I feel connected to the overall direction and vision of the hospital? I'm sure you folks have probably seen similar things. The next lowest question was do I feel empowered to make suggestions on how things can be done better, more efficient, or more effective? Probably the second lowest scoring question. So if you think about kind of just take a step back and just look at overall human happiness and fulfillment, one of the main elements in human happiness and fulfillment is growth and progress. And if I feel so if you think back to the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, or even earlier, and manufacturing, what did we have? We had a whole lot of workers that came in, ran the drill press all day, that's all they did, and that's all we wanted them to do. And we had a very, very high rate of injuries at work, we had very low employee engagement, and you saw manufacturing start to change that many years ago. And really what we're at the point in our kind of journey is changing that for healthcare workers and caregivers. There's no silver bullet to drive employee engagement. Every environment's a little bit dynamic and different. We will cover the step-by-step approach that we use, which touched on a whole lot of different areas, which I'll talk about. Here are some of the elements that I'll mention. So just an overall introduction into Lean and Six Sigma. Now I'm not advocating for us to go out and teach all of our employees what a hypothesis test is or what p-values mean. Like, we're not in the business of trying to freak people out. However, should all of our caregivers have a general understanding of what the 8 wastes are, right? Should they be able to look at something and say, why are we doing it that way? Because if employees don't understand, who's familiar with the 8 wastes? Okay, so everyone, good. If employees don't understand that concept, when they look at a busy ED, or they look at a busy OR, or med-surg unit, and they see all these things happening, how do they translate that in their mind? Go ahead, answer.
Busy.
They're busy. We're moving, we're busy. I gotta run over here, I gotta go up to this fax machine, this supply room, I have to go back down. I mean, this is the stuff that happens every day, right? And even though they feel busy, they also feel frustrated, unempowered, annoyed. I mean, I followed around we were doing kind of a turnover time assessment in an OR once, and I followed a circulating nurse around, and for every single day she set up, on average she was walking like 3.1 miles or something. Okay, which is great from an exercise standpoint, but very bad. I mean, she was just upset the whole time too. It was just anger, like, oh, she took this thing and moved it over there. And so you talked a little bit about 5S, talk about waste emotion. Like, that's what we try to focus on really when we're looking at 5S. And obviously we want to have a nice, tidy environment as well. Okay, so a couple of others just quickly. We did some strategic deployment at a high level with Hosh and Connery. Took kind of the regional roadmap, and senior leadership and senior level leaders, they get annoyed and frustrated too when they feel like the region or the system is saying, here's what you guys need to do. So my first biggest challenge was like, how do we empower those folks to know that the regional or the hospital strategy is their own and not something that was done to them, right? Develop one-year breakthrough goals that can be cascaded, which we'll talk about in a second. The key word here is cascaded. How do we take things that are at ministry or hospital level and actually get it down to each particular department and unit? Extensively train the managers and directors on strategic vision and visual management. You'd be surprised, maybe you wouldn't be surprised, when you walk around with something like a strategic vision or your major pillars or something that you're really focusing on improvement. If you go out to like 20 managers even, maybe 15 couldn't really give you a sound like description of it, which is a little scary. So we had to train those folks as well to say, here's what it is, here's what it means. It's not just background white noise. Visual management, go live and monthly operational review. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then finally, one of the hardest parts is how do we sustain and how do we continue so we don't have to keep coming back and doing the same thing. So like I mentioned a few slides ago, if employees don't have a general understanding of just the basics, some might call it a white belt training level, if they don't have this understanding of what these guys look like, they look at their process and they say, hey, we are busy, and this is and they are busy. And the other caveat I'll say to this is known as non-value add, right? But be careful with how we throw that word around, because these are things that we have to do to get the job done. These are the processes we've created. So how do employees know what that waste looks like? Well, in Southern California, we do this 2 or 3 hour training, and I know a lot of you immediately will think about that and say, how do we do that for every new employee? Well, you got to find a way, because they have to know just the basics of value add, non-value add, and these type of things. So we do this for every single employee that starts. We've done the training for all of our hospitals on this. And when employees start, they go through this training that's pretty fun, and we've made it a good experience. How do we ensure employees know how to utilize visual management and suggestion boards to provide ideas on how to work safer, more effectively, more efficiently? So, one thing I'll mention about our boards. They were pretty much started as an HRO board, high reliability organization board, where if the employees had anything on safety they wanted to suggest, they could put it on the board. I immediately kind of got a red flag on that, and I'm like, that's great, of course we want that, but I want these employees, when they see something that just doesn't make sense, to put it on the board, right? It's not just say something for safety, it's say something for anything. So anyways, we developed that training, we rolled it out. Next step, this isn't meant for you guys to be able to read and like say, oh, what's that? This is just the Hoshin Connery strategic deployment that we use. The format that you use isn't as important as the content. This is basically where we just worked with senior leadership and said, for each one of the hospitals, here's our overall regional goals. Let's break them into where we want to be in 3 years. What do we need to do this year to get to our goals in 3 years? So these ultimately became our ministry goals, which I'll show you in just a second. A couple notes here. Some senior leadership, especially in healthcare, have never done anything like this. So we have to kind of train them on that, show them what it is. And another caveat, sometimes a challenge to get hospital level leadership to break away from day-to-day firefighting, which you mentioned, and problem solving, right? So just keep this in mind. We're so busy sometimes doing things that are urgent that we don't do what's important, right? So this is the important work that needs to be done. And sometimes hospital leadership struggles with that because they see their value as getting out there and helping them fix this, and oh my gosh, this is happening in the ED, I gotta get down there. We gotta break away from that because that is not the value that leaders really create. Leaders take a step back and think about the strategic vision and things like that. Okay, so again, just wanted to give you an idea of what it looks like for us. Essentially, we take our one-year breakthrough objectives here. They come over here and they actually become our measures that we look at throughout the year. And this is probably, this is at a high level, so you guys probably all have similar things to this, right? Like, what's the best place? We want to make it the best place for our employees. We want our patients to have a great experience. We want to be good stewards of our resources. Probably not exact for everyone, but you get the idea that we have like 5 pillars that we look at. And those kind of drill down to what do we need to do this year to get to our 3-year strategic goal, right? And again, so it ties from this over to here. And now, once our managers and directors understand this is the sheet I was talking about earlier when I took it to the managers, or if anyone took it to the managers and directors and said, hey, tell me a little bit about this. It looked like I handed them like, you know, a trigonometry equation or something. So having them understand this was a big first piece. Then we started to work with the different units to say, what should this look like? I can tell you what I think it should look like, but why don't you guys tell us what it should look like, right? So we really needed to do the training that I just talked about with the managers and directors on visual management and daily huddles. What does a good huddle look like? What does good daily management look like, or visual management? This is a new element to their huddles, so they need to be trained on how to run a good huddle, right? Like left to the devices of most, leadership, they're going to go back to just the old ways that they used to lead huddles. The training included how often to update the data, including things like, this is a line chart. This is how we read a line chart. Don't ever take for granted that your folks or the people that work with you understand how to read this, what we look at as simple charts, right? Like we have to train people on that. And God forbid we get to a control chart, now we really have to show them how to use that, right? But keep it simple, keep it easy. We don't really mess with too much control charts yet. Some areas do, but how often to update the data, how to create the charts, and how to lead that good discussion. And now the really important part, how to work with their teams to cascade the hospital strategy and objectives, what we talked about over here, to departmental level goals that actually mean something to the employees, right? If I go to employees from this one for best use of resources and say we want to get our budget to CMI admitted blah, 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 they're going to be like, that doesn't resonate with me at all. How do we resonate with these folks? So you can see that we had a couple different designs based on the areas we were putting them in, but essentially they looked something like this. We also had a vertical option where you remember these from before. The employees and the leadership knew what the hospital level goals were for these. So all we suggested is, can you develop departmental level goals that will impact these? That's about as much guidance as we gave them. And then the word I like to use is this, or the words, rigidly flexible. We didn't give them carte blanche to be able to design whatever board they wanted, because I've seen places that have done that, and then you walk into each unit, it's like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Right? So when people transfer around and go to different units or departments, we wanted to give them some sort of standardized way to look at this, and this is what we got. So again, we wanted the employees to work with their managers to say, what's something that we can do to impact the best customer experience? What's something we can do to impact best use of resources, right? So this is kind of what the output looks like, and then this is what, so we'll talk a little bit more about this in a second. I want to show you a few examples. But again, it has to be something that's important to the caregivers, and something that they have passion around. So just really quickly, we're talking about a bottom up a little bit, now from a top down. With our senior leaderships at each of the ministry, or hospital, sorry, I keep saying ministries, that's what we call them, in each one of our hospitals, they have this, which is a dashboard, which you'll see looks a lot like the other one, but now we have green, yellow, red, which we're able to very, very quickly work through this with the senior leadership, because they meet with the regional leadership once a month and have a report out. Now we're only talking about the ones that might need an immediate countermeasure. We're not wasting our time talking about every single item on here. So we developed this to see if when we're on track, when do we need countermeasures, and we work with the regional team once a month to have this discussion. It's really guided and developed a really good conversation that is efficient. Okay, so this is what they look like, right? So so a couple notes here, so you can see some cool stuff that even looking at this just warms my heart a little bit. But things like staff social event at least once a quarter, or can we use this IV pump to whatever, right? Number of hours of double time, right? So they're just looking at their own little ecosystems. What are things we can do to improve this, right? And so the idea was, like I said before, when this was really launched in the beginning, it was all about safety. Like, okay, if you have any ideas about safety, put them up here. And that's fine, we want that, but what I think we're really getting to and where this has been powerful is visually people are seeing this connection, right? Of not just, oh, I can put a safety idea up here. They're seeing the connection of, well, number of double time hours. Well, this happened last week that didn't need to happen. Maybe I should put a suggestion about that. And they throw it up there, right? So we didn't really push that hard, but it's a natural kind of fit where they're understanding, like, here are the things we can do to impact this. So it's been a journey. It's tough work, right? So a couple notes. Managers need to address these suggestions timely. These over here they're called HRO cards. Again, like I said, they're throwing up those ideas. They're based on either the 5 best pillars or just safety ideas. But I'll tell you this, the thing that irritates me the most is and we train this very, very hard. Once they put a suggestion up here, like I think we gave them a limit of 1 week, 7 days, it needs to start moving in progress, okay? Because nothing is more frustrating for an employee than when I go up to you and I say, hey, I have a suggestion, and I get the Heisman on it, or when I put a suggestion up here and it just sits there for months. So we were very, very, not strict, but very, we set the standard of 7 days, move it over to the in process, and it needs to keep moving. So, you folks, based on your environment, can do that however you want, but you need to be very, clear about what the expectations are. Another huge one, celebrate performance successes, right? So when we have improvements, when we start meeting our goal, we have little celebrations, right? They don't need to be crazy, like parties or anything, but let's celebrate, let's reward good performance. And then eventually tying into individual targets and performance goals. So for some of you that might be like way down the road, pie in the sky, but it was for us when we first started, but now we're really tying these into our individual caregivers' goals and targets and really rewarding them when things are done and we meet our goals. So that's that piece, a little bit of an administrative piece here. All of these ideas that are coming up, we want to understand if there's like trends or if there's common things that we're hearing, right? Like, oh, our supply closet is over here when really we need it over here. So all of these ideas, after they're done, are logged into like an internal SharePoint system, nothing too complicated or amazing. It's just a way for us to kind of keep track of everything so that we have that framework so that when they upload the ideas, basically the Operations Excellence Committee or whatever makes sense for your particular team can review the spreadsheet for project ideas, just do it, and replication ideas. Or another one is obvious any trending safety concerns. And we make sure that those are addressed. So if we're seeing fundamental things across the hospital, they log it in here and then we can talk about that and say, hey, does this need to be a green belt or a black belt or a Kaizen event? Okay, and again, just kind of in the previous presentation, she did a great job talking about leadership rounding. I mean, this is one of the key sprinkles of ingredients that has to happen because people need that constant reinforcement, right? You're doing a great job. I love how you're using your learning board. We have about 10 questions over here just because we wanted to open that dialogue up. So leadership rounding on the boards is one of the most important elements. We recommend, and we actually track and make sure that each unit is being hit once a month. So they're having that dialogue and that conversation once a month. And we develop the questions up there that we're talking about. So again, a big thing is we want to make sure that punitive, it's never punitive, it's just open and constructive dialogue and conversation, right? Like I've never seen these things become more of a disaster when you have a leader who comes out like, why is this that? Why? I mean, that's what we don't want. So, and in healthcare, it's not as big of a problem, but yeah. Okay, so a little bit of benefits and results. Now, we've in our healthcare system, we've been focusing on hundreds and thousands of different improvements. So for me to be able to say, oh, we did this and it gave us all these amazing results is a little bit, I don't know if the correlation is exact. However, I will say that there is a high correlation between folks that have sustained this and their results. So I'm giving you here just the general hospital that I've worked with, not general hospital, but a hospital I've worked with quite a bit. And this is just some of the outcomes they've had, right? So hospitals that have successfully implemented a solid daily management system that truly empower the employees have seen 20 to 30% improvement in engagement scores, top box. With that, and it kind of ties into that second slide I talked about, right? This increase in engagement scores drove a direct correlation to decreased hack levels and decreased level and the length of stay. If we have less hacks, hospital-acquired conditions, it kind of goes hand in hand. Our length of stay is going to start to improve. Now, have we done dozens of other things to impact that? Of course, but it's kind of cool to see, when you have employees really focused on this, all the improvement you get. And then the operating of data, which ties into a lot of things, decreasing the length of stay and the waste associated with these hacks, have really helped to drive earnings and margin improvement. So, so it's been quite a journey. I mean, listen, if you think it's as simple, and I know you don't, but if you think it's as simple as just throwing a board in a unit and walking away, this is constant daily updating. This is constant grinding it out, conversations, talking about it. Nothing drives me more crazy than going to, not just in where I work, but anywhere, and they say, yeah, we have daily management, blah, 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 and then you walk over to the board and it says the Connie rate from 2014. Right? So like we really have to sustain this, and we do that from the constant focus. So a couple of our key takeaways. Really important to celebrate operational successes with the departments and units. So important culturally to begin the transition of checking your mind at the door and daily management firefighting. Right? We do not want people that come in and check their mind at the door. We want people to come in and think from an experiment standpoint, from a changing standpoint. And that experimental and learning environment is the antidote to the martyr mentality. Right? I'm sure we've seen some martyrs in our work environments. And Margaret and I also say apathy, right? That's the other big one that runs rampant. Obviously, many other factors and initiatives help drive all these outcomes, but I really feel like visual management served as the foundation that sets the stage for constructive dialogue and improvement. And like I mentioned, successfully takes the top-down and bottom-up daily commitment. So that's our journey. That's kind of the things that we've been working on over the last few years. Hopefully that gave you a little description and helped spark some ideas. And if you folks ever want to reach out and ask any questions, I think my email is included in there, so you can definitely do that. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier when we were talking about being rigidly flexible with the visual management boards, you used the phrase, we are kind of strict. You know, who, if you could talk a little bit about who is actually part of the leader rounding doing the strict, and what's the process for accountability if something's sitting up there for 2 or 3 weeks? And
So it depends on the hospital, but for the most part, everyone in the C-suite is rounding. We call them pie huddles. It's, you probably have somewhere near you, but it's everyone in the C-suite, and so we have 10 people or whatever in that department, and every single unit's hit once a month, right? So the accountability piece is that if our senior leadership does that rounding, they may have something up there for 6 weeks, but that only really happens once, because they know that's a trigger question to ask, why is this not moving? Yeah.
Are any of your huddle boards in patient-facing areas?
Yeah.
And are your managers directed or given a script if they're approached by a patient?
So they are. So there are some general. That's the question that's always asked. And sometimes the rigid flexibility was that we wanted to have it where everyone was rounding, or wherever they did their daily huddles. And so yes, we did prepare for that. And to your point. People, if they understand what they're looking at, they'll still ask questions, but I don't know, I'm kind of like hit or miss on that. I think it's a great thing because they take ownership of it and say, I don't want my CAUTI rate to be here, right? I want it to improve. But yeah, we do some scripting, and the questions don't come in nearly as much as you would think they would. But yeah, you have to prepare for that as well. Yeah.
Great presentation, Corey, by the
Thank
way.
you.
Just a quick question, just on your own slide there with your learning, the martyrs. Do you have the same problem that we do over in the UK in regards to the martyrs are generally the people that have been there the longest, who actually, like the consultants that have been there for donkey's years, or, like you can't tell us.
Why do you think the ones that have been there the longest are the biggest martyrs?
Well, I was actually going to put that to you.
Oh.
You have to say,
Man. I
it's
thought I was going to get off on
that. Are the martyrs generally those kind of people?
Not necessarily, yes, for the most part. The people that have been there the longest have unfortunately been through our healthcare world for so long that they feel very disempowered and very disenfranchised, I guess, in the sense that they've given a suggestion 20 years ago and nothing happened, so now I'm never going to give a suggestion again. So the ones that have worked there the longest in that environment, those are the best ones that, if you can start to turn them, have the best ideas, and we'll give you the best ideas and improvement ideas. Yeah.
Corey, so you use the X mixtures. So you take it from your 3-year goals to your 1-year targets, I guess, the way of saying that. Do you take it out to the project level, or just identify the 1-year targets? And then, because what you have is an idea generation board.
Yeah.
Which isn't really daily management, it's more like strategic management.
But we wanted to create the foundation for taking these and matriculating them out to the units and saying how essentially can each unit impact these, right? So the projects, I think here's our measurements and here's our projects up here. These are the projects that we're, black belts and different folks are working on to help impact these. But this was the most important element of this was getting all of these, which are turning into these, and then essentially they all tie back to the 5 pillars. And as long as they are, the units were suggesting things that could impact these, that's where our rigid flexibility came in. We could be a little bit more stringent, and we were in some departments to say, hey, we're really focused on patient flow, and your length of stay is very bad, or could use some work, so we need you to focus on that this year. We did that for a few departments, but to start, the more kind of openness and just in participation, generally is better than being more stringent and saying you need to focus exactly on
Did
this.
you do alignment across ministries or just within ministries?
We did it across, so again, what these are developed from are the overall regional kind of 3-year, 1-year plans, so they're all connected in that sense. But from ministry to ministry, you see a lot of the same targets and goals because they're all coming down from the same place.
Corey, I have to stop so we can get ready for the
Yeah.
next speaker. I know Thunder, right? Thunder?
Yeah.
So,